Hello everyone, welcome back again to my channel. Before watching this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's start this video. Maritime law enforcement and compliance in Indonesia, problems and recommendation, part 2. These vessels are equipped with radios, radar, and other navigation equipment. The second main type of sea patrol in coastal areas is focused on monitoring, control, and conservation of marine biodiversity. This is usually controlled by the DGFPNC of the MOF with support from the Indonesian Navy and the Marine Police, and protects marine parks and the environment. For coastal areas, the agency funding the operation controls the focus and areas are operation control the focus and area of patrols. The Navy and Marine Police provide law enforcement support the primary agency unless they are directed to take control of the primary task. Several Indonesian agencies also carry out sea patrols beyond the territorial sea and into the exclusive economic zone. National sovereignty and the control of other illegal activities such as smuggling, anti-piracy, and illegal fishing are the main focus of these sea patrols. Although Indonesia has laws that cover coastal and marine resource management, in reality, there is a high degree of non-compliant behavior. There has been widespread illegal fishing in almost all Indonesian coastal areas, even in remote areas. Indonesian law enforcement has also suffered from systemic corruption in government institutions. Vegan argues that the involvement of the Indonesian Navy in the fishing industry has resulted in difficulties for the government in implementing trawling company regulation. Example, the banning of trawl nets in the Arafura Sea surrounding West Papua. The involvement of the Induk Korporasi Angkatan Laut or INKOPAL in the fishing industry is a business partner of the leading foreign fishing companies whose trawlers play the Arafura Sea has also resulted in ineffective law enforcement in this area. These problems, however, are only a small part of the multitude of difficulties facing law enforcement, from monitoring and surveillance to prosecution and deterrent penalties. These problems are due to several interrelated factors. First, limited enforcement resources, including funds, personnel, and facilities. Second, loopholes and lack of integration in the laws and regulation for coastal and marine resource management. Third, lack of interagency coordination mechanism, and although Indonesia has laws that cover coastal and marine resource management, in reality there is a high degree of non-compliant behavior. There has been widespread illegal fishing in almost all Indonesian coastal areas, even in remote areas. Fourth, lack of environmental and natural resource awareness of problems and impact from illegal or destructive practices in the short, medium, and long term for food security and the livelihoods of the coastal communities. Fifth, lack of an appropriately aware, competent, and committed judicial court system with respect to marine resource issues. And sixth, the vast geographic area requiring surveillance and enforcement. These issues are discussed below. Communication among the various enforcement agencies. Lack of funds. The Asian economic crisis in the late 1990s hit Indonesia's economic sector very hard. The economic crisis forced the government to prioritize government funds for poverty alleviation and currency support programs rather than for law enforcement programs, particularly in coastal and marine areas. This reprioritization away from law enforcement has impacted on performance of most law enforcement agencies in Indonesia. Insufficient budgets, coupled with inadequate budgetary controls, have resulted in difficulties in financing sea operations, including procurement of facilities and equipment, maintenance, and personnel costs. Sea patrols and air surveillance operations have decreased significantly, and some law enforcement agencies were actually economically pushed into becoming part of the compliance problem rather than the solution. Lack of equipment. The 9 patrol vessels of MOMAF are far from enough to provide effective sea patrols in coastal and marine areas. As one of the leading agencies with maritime law enforcement responsibilities, the MOMAF needs at least 90 to 100 patrol vessels to cover the huge fishing areas in Indonesia. Andin argues that the MOMAF needed at least 20 years to enhance its equipment and resources to achieve the necessary enforcement program for a large country like Indonesia. Currently, the MOMAF has only the capacity to build 5 patrol vessels a year. Maintenance is one of those flexible items that usually disappear in budget cuts with cumulative negative impacts on fixed assets such as vessels and other major equipment. The equipment for new and increased assets should be assessed against available current and future funding, value of the research and alternative compliance mechanism, better use of existing assets through interagency memoranda of agreement, or preservation or privatization of such service through accountable output-based deliverables to reduce corruption, misuse of funds, and other inefficiencies. The lack of equipment is also a problem for the Indonesian Navy and the MOF. According to, according to traditional military equipment needs assessments, the Indonesian Navy requires 300 vessels, large and small, to conduct effective sea patrols within the Indonesian jurisdiction. Thus far, it has only 115 vessels, and of these, only about 25 are operating at sea at any given moment. As one of the leading agencies in preventing and protecting marine biodiversity in Indonesia, the MOF has also suffered from the lack of enforcement resources. The lack of funds, facilities, and personnel has led to ineffective enforcement activity in most marine protected areas under its management, including marine national parks, marine recreation parks, and marine and wetland wildlife sanctuaries. Ineffective enforcement has resulted in illegal fishing practices in many marine protected areas. The illegal fishing practices occur even in totally protected areas such as the Komodo National Park. Pat and Johanni revealed that dynamite, poison, and other illegal gear for fishing have been used in the Komodo Island. The lack of trained personnel, limited funds for most government enforcement agencies have also resulted in the lack of training for personnel. Many law enforcement agencies cannot conduct proper basic training to improve the capacity and capability of their personnel due to the lack of funding for training and education to enhance professionalism. They also cannot attract trained or professional personnel because they cannot pay appropriate salaries. Maritime law enforcement in Indonesia is confronted by several challenges, including lack of funding, facilities, trained personnel, interagency, coordinating mechanism, environmental awareness, the absence of integrated laws, and lack of political will and commitment. Some potential solutions have been proposed that could be considered to address the problems of maritime law enforcement for the management of its coastal and marine resources. This solution include two broad options. First, establishing a national maritime law enforcement unit or a national coast guard, and second, establishing regional maritime law enforcement unit. Now, Following economic and political recovery in Indonesia, it is time for the country to change the old paradigm about law enforcement. Otherwise, the beauty and abundance of its natural resources will disappear. The coastal residents, so dependent on the sustainability of these resources, would also lose their main life support system. Okay everyone, that's all this article today. Thank you so much for watching this video. Until the next one. Bye bye.